Genesis 2:4 has a rather confusing verse as you come to the end of it. We've just gone through 6 days of creation plus the seventh day of Sabbath rest. And then you come to Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, and you read, "This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created." Now, I said it's going to be a little bit confusing because it seems like we just read an account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, and now we get another account. And there's some other differences that are striking immediately as well. A different name for God is used. All throughout Genesis chapter 1, the name Elohim occurred over and over again. That is just the generic word for God in Hebrew. But in Genesis chapter 2, we get Yahweh Elohim, the personal name for God, is used. And it's usually translated the Lord God. If you've got a good Bible, and I hope you have a good Bible, the word Lord should be all capital. That's the translator's way of letting you know that the translator is translating God's personal name, Yahweh. This is the name that identifies this God of Israel. No other God in the world is named Yahweh. This is the name on God's business cards, his office door, all his letterhead. This is Yahweh. This is distinct. God, the Elohim can be anybody. Yahweh is the God of Israel, and that's the term that's used here in Genesis chapter 2. And then all of a sudden you get God planting and God walking and God shaping and God forming and God providing, doing surgery. Some very different picture of God that you get here. We also see that the man is created at the beginning, very early in the story, and placed in paradise, placed in the garden. But I do think it's interesting they're being placed in the garden. Paradise is not getting to do whatever you want. There are rules in paradise. You're not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And there is work to do in paradise. As you have to tend the garden and keep it, serve it and protect it. So then the humanity had to be the groundskeeper for the Garden of Eden. Now I imagine that's going to be an easy job, but there is a work to do at the very beginning of creation. It's not just hanging around and watching football in paradise. It actually there's some rules and you actually have work to do. Creation of woman is an interesting verse. I want to look at verse 18 of chapter 2. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a companion for him who corresponds to him." The important point there, companion who corresponds or helper is not a reference to a subordinate in any way. This picture, and not to be too Jerry Maguire on this picture is one of completion, not subordination. It is a picture of the man, and the man is incomplete in some ways, and that needs to be found complete in community. But as you go through this text, you'll notice a lot of difference. You remember our ordered creation of Genesis 1. Genesis 2, man gets formed first from the dust, then the garden's planted, then the trees, then the animals, then the woman. So it's completely different order, on top of the fact that there's no water in Genesis 2, like there's water everywhere in Genesis 1. So what's going on? I mean, God getting his hands dirty, God planting and shaping and moving and forming and walking. This is a very imminent picture of God, very different from Genesis 1. Genesis 1, God's very transcendent, very other, speaks it and it happens. Genesis 2, God is very close, very near. We get some details on how. It is a very imminent, very close at hand picture of God. So what's going on here? Why do we have these two different pictures of God? Now, this is where I think people often do a disservice to this text. There will be those, and I know some of you in your mind right now are trying to do it, who will say they're not really saying different things, that maybe it's just different perspectives, that they're really just saying basically the same thing. You do that, and I think you rob the text of its power, because these texts stand right next to each other and say very different things. Why? God is transcendent in Genesis 1, God is eminent in Genesis 2, because God is both. The mistake that people make when they read Genesis 1 and 2 is very often they think Genesis 1 and 2 are about creation. Genesis 1 and 2 aren't about creation. Genesis 1 and 2 are about God. And Genesis 1 and 2 are using creation to talk about God. As I would argue, the whole Bible is about God. We are using these stories to talk about who God is. That's the focus of this text. The focus is trying to tell us this is the divine. And you know what? God is both immanent and transcendent. We have a God who is above all and over all and master of all creation and near enough to be concerned that the man is alone, near enough to be concerned to walk with, to shape, to form, to plant. So we have these contradictory pictures of God in Genesis 1 because we have a contradictory God in many ways, a God who is big and a God who is close at the same time. And the Bible highlights that. So this is a wonderful example of the Bible. James Sanders used to like to say that the canon is self-correcting, a wonderful example of the Bible being very good to keep you from taking too much of it out of context if you read all of it. So I think having Genesis 1 and 2 next to each other saying different things, not a bug, it's a feature, because we have a God who is truly remarkable in that way.